He's gonna signal me. All right. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Dennis of Avance Ensemble, and we're here with Sandy Brown of Spectrum Law Firm.
Spectrum Law Firm Miami.
Yes, we're so happy to be here with her to discuss an amazing topic, estate planning. And so we're going to just pause a little bit to ask Sandy to tell you a little bit about Sandy. So Sandy, introduce yourself. Tell us about your not only what you do, but how you got to where you are, because I think that's very important.
Okay, so long story, we'll make it short. My name is Sandy Boisseron. Haitians will pronounce it Boisron. I am a South Florida native, and I was born out of state. You know, a lot of the Haitians are born in the Northeast, so I'm from Boston, Massachusetts originally. And so just a few things about me. I went to school down here pretty much all of my schooling, Horace Mann Middle, Miami Shores Elementary, University of Miami, North Miami Senior High. And I originally finished college and started working in the nonprofit world. Mm-hmm. And that's where I kind of got the feeling about being in the legal profession. Right. But before actually getting here, it took me a little bit of time. I went through the education system for a bit. I was a teacher. I taught middle school science.
Wow.
I spent many years dealing with the kiddies and enjoying that life.
What grade did you teach?
I taught middle school grades, so a lot of it was 7th and 8th grades, a little stint in 6th grade. But I had an opportunity to deal with that world and do a lot of activities with the kids because I do enjoy working with children. And so during that process, it was still working on getting to this law thing. And I got a taste of wanting to be in the profession and decided to take that leap.
Right.
So in my 6th year of teaching, I started working through my process, and all of a sudden I got an acceptance somewhere and I was out of here. I left for Michigan. Yep. And so right now I am working with my partner, Jermise G. She is the Immigration and Social Security Disability Appeals part of our team. She's also licensed in Texas.
All right.
And so our partnership came about from a friendship that we had in law school. And right now we've just hit our 2-year anniversary on July the 1st.
Congratulations.
So we are right now in the process of building the next level of our business. So of course we had to be here with Avance Ensemble to do this good work. So I'm hoping today we'll have a really good conversation about what I do and what our firm is all about.
Perfect. So I'm so happy to be here with Sandy to talk about something that's very important for our community, and it's really ensuring that we have all the necessary information to really make decisions in some of the most crucial times in our lives. A little bit about Avance Ensemble. Avance Ensemble is about 3 years old. We've been doing work to preserve culture in Haitian Americans, to build economic power, and to build political power as well. And so what does it look like for our community to advance together? And that's what we're here. We're here with Sandy, who's Haitian American, who is doing amazing things in terms of estate planning and law in general. But today we're going to talk about estate planning and what comes up for our community.
Absolutely.
So let's just go ahead and get started. So my understanding, I'm not in the legal profession. I'm still in the nonprofit sector. But in terms of estate planning and what we're seeing happening in our community and what makes us vulnerable as a population, what would you say where should we begin in this discussion?
I think the discussion covers a lot of different issues.
Right.
One is of being educated about all of the potential things that can come about because we own property, we own businesses, we have contracts with people. We do a lot of work out in the community. We have children.
Right.
We've built up families, and sometimes we have families at different extents, right? We may have other kids in another marriage. So there are a lot of things that we've invested into our communities, but we don't realize how important it is to protect those things and to leave a legacy for the next generation. Many other communities invest in their families and build something for the next generation so that they leave them ready in order for them to have that legacy take them over. But in our community, we're always thinking, well, the government can take care of that.
Right.
Well, they're going to get it anyway. And those are the comments that I get from a lot of families in our community when I say, okay, do you have these documents in place? It's like, well, the kids are going to get it anyway. They're my kids. Well, that's not how it works.
Right.
If as an individual, I pass away right now, yes, there are certain individuals that are entitled to, but don't forget that if you have other family members right? If I have kids from another relationship, they're going to get two.
Right.
If I'm still technically married to someone, they're going to get, right? So it's not automatic things that we should be looking to. It should be, what can we do to leave our legacy, and what can we do to prepare for that unexpected time, because we don't know when our time is going to come.
Right. And I think one of the reasons why this conversation is super important is because we're a generation that's living in the middle of two different cultures, two different legal systems.
Right.
And so it's really important for us to begin to help understand or break down what really we're dealing with.
Right.
And so in terms of, we can start with, let's say, what issue do you think we should start with?
I would like to start with the issue of listing multiple people on property.
Right.
I keep coming across the scenario over and over where you have a couple that's unmarried.
Right.
They buy a property together.
So unmarried meaning
Like,
people
they've never been married. They
Okay.
were in a relationship for a long time, and they decide to buy a property together.
Right.
And maybe they get married after. But essentially, they weren't married when they bought the property.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is, let's say you have a situation where both of them pass away. Well, the wife may have kids from a previous relationship. Husband may have kids from previous relationship, and they may have kids jointly. What ends up happening is, if you don't have any documents in place to say what goes, literally that property could end up being divided up into fractions, right? And so you're dealing now with a situation that's no longer, okay, I have my things here and this is where I want them to go.
Right.
Now it's a matter of, well, if I don't have any documents in place, the state of Florida is going to decide where my stuff goes. And if I have children, that's going to be my level of looking to, right? If I'm married, I can look to the other spouse, but if I don't have someone to look to at that level, I'm now looking at the children.
Why is that problematic for the state of Florida to make that kind of decision for your family?
It's problematic because, let's say you have a situation where the family is segmented, which I've seen in many instances. Our families can be segmented where people don't get along and people are not together anymore. You'll have a property where half of the property is for one person's estate, half of the property is another person's estate. So guess what? You have two probates going on. And if the individuals that are involved are not on the same page, you may have some other litigation that has to be done in order for them to ultimately get what they're entitled to. And it may be a matter of having to sell the property to give everybody their share. And maybe it was the intention of the parents to say, well, I want this house to stay in the family.
Right.
Well, you didn't leave any documentation for that to happen.
And I think even more than that, just husband and wives or children, there's also people who may not be in a family at all, or extended family in terms of second, third cousins.
Absolutely.
Who may have had the financial capability to help you out with this loan,
Right.
and they're on the house.
Yes.
All these things, I think, in terms of folks who have parents that are aging,
Yes.
who will have to deal with the fallout of lack of any kind of documents or paperwork. You know, there's some work for us to be done and conversations to have
Right.
to ensure that we're in the best position possible,
Right.
so that we are not left spending all of our money in probate.
Right, because the dollar signs that you may spend on the estate planning end may be a couple hundred, a couple thousand. But the dollar signs on the probate end, I've seen probates go into the $20,000 and $30,000 range,
Right.
right? So you may have a piece of property, let's say the property is worth about $200,000. By the time you deduct the fees of litigation,
Right.
all the costs and expenses, the pot that could have been this big ends up being this big,
Right.
right? So you lose out on some of the funding that could have been there to help
Create wealth in the family.
create wealth in the family,
Exactly.
allow you to buy businesses and more property and stuff like that. So it's a lot.
I think also, so that's one aspect in terms of homes or any kind of whatever you own, having those documents in place. So beginning to have those conversations as our parents begin to age.
Yes.
And like, look, adult to adult conversation,
Yeah.
Mom, these are the things I will be responsible for. What were your plans, or what were you thinking in terms of next step for the generation to come? How did you want to separate these kinds of
Absolutely.
documents? Which is hard for a lot of for our
Haitians
generation.
don't want to talk to their kids about anything. Like they don't want to engage in that discussion, because it's almost like, well, if I start talking about the planning for what could happen or what will ultimately happen, it's like, well, I'm probably going to die tomorrow or something.
Right,
Or
right.
like there's an issue there. And I've noticed most of my Haitian clients that come to me, it's usually the woman in the family that comes. The man in the family is typically like, well, what do I need to do all that for? Like, that's just a bunch of stuff. Like, what do I need to do all those extra things for? My stuff's going to go to all of my kids. Because the mentality is, well, in Haiti, this is how this goes. So I think striking up the conversation a little bit, even if your parents don't want to talk to you, see if you can send them somewhere.
Right.
You know, you can send them to someone who they can sit down with and talk about, you know, what their intentions are and what it is that they need to have in place to protect those intentions.
Right. So if you can have the conversation, I think there's also, you're taking small steps to have the conversation. So you're not having a full family meeting,
Absolutely.
but you may mention it here and there until you can get to a point where you're like, you know, where are the documentation, to make sure that you're ready. Let's talk about healthcare designees, surrogates.
So one of the big things that I've noticed lately is I've been starting to get these strange calls where it's like someone just went into the hospital.
Right.
And they're in hospital right now. Okay, we need a power of attorney. Okay, I am going to need to speak to the person who's going to give that power. Because remember, a power of attorney is a document that gives someone else your powers, right? It gives someone else the authority to act on your behalf. And in order for that person to be able to do so, you have to be capable of making that decision.
Right.
So if you're in the hospital,
You can't do
I'm
that.
already on alert, right? Is the doctor saying that you're still capable of making decisions? If you are, okay, we still can kind of work that out. But if you're not, we're no longer talking about a power of attorney anymore. Because it might be likely that you'll have to have a guardianship put in place if you're not capable of making the decision.
So even right now, should we have power of attorneys?
If you are 18 years old, you should have a power of attorney, a living will, and healthcare designation. So you should have a document that handles your finances, which is your power of attorney.
Right.
And finances, I mean everything. Property, investments, all accounts, litigation, anything that you can think of on that end. And then as far as the healthcare, you want someone designated who can make decisions on your behalf, who can tell the doctors, look, I don't want to be resuscitated, or that I don't want to, take advantage of these types of treatments or whatever, or at least speak on your behalf in terms of what you would want or not want.
And this is just not someone, I'm like, okay, Sandy, you're my healthcare designee.
No.
You got me. You can make all decisions. This is
No.
actual documentation.
This is actual documents. It should have, notarized, have some witnesses. There's language that needs to be in these documents. Please keep in mind that if it's healthcare, we're talking about HIPAA laws.
Right.
So there's certain language that needs to be there. And then as far as the power of attorney dealing with the finances, there's language that needs to be in there too, because banks and financial institutions, you already know how hard it is when you're calling them to deal with your own accounts.
Right.
Imagine if you're calling to deal with somebody else's account.
Yeah.
So
They don't want to give you access to your own money.
they don't want to give you access to your own money. So imagine trying to get someone else to access your funds. It's not that simple. So I would just say that if someone turns 18, especially for these kids going away to college, you want to make sure that they have a document in place so that as the parent, you can handle their affairs. But also, if you have an aging parent, please don't wait until they become to the point where it's dementia, it's
Right.
Alzheimer's, it's their memory loss, it's other issues that prevent them from being able to make those decisions, right? They're not capable of making decisions. So start having the conversation early. Let them know that, we want to have some documents in place to make sure that if maybe you don't want to go to the financial office or the bank and you want your daughter to be able to go, well, this is the only way that your daughter can do this. She has to have a document in place that says this person is authorized, it's notarized, it has a seal, it has witnesses. It's an official document that any bank or financial institution has a legal department that would review it.
Right. One of the things I often say about immigrant populations is I think there's an assumption that we know more in terms of legal systems or any kind of system than we actually do.
Right.
Because some of these systems can seem so formal compared to what we're used to back home.
Right.
And we just think, everything's going to be separated. The kids can make decisions. They know they were my children. It's just not how America works.
Yeah, I can't count how many times someone will say something to me like that, and I'm like, well, you can do what you want, but I'm just going to tell you how it operates here. Everything here, operates by, you got to have some authorization.
Right.
You have to have some document in your hand that says you are authorized, you're the legal rep. I was on the phone the other day with somebody, and she kept telling the client there is no legally authorized, whatever the language she was using. And I kept saying to the client, well, what she's saying is you have to have a probate proceeding in place, and the court provides you with a document that says you're the authorized rep of the estate for that person.
Right.
That's what the financial person kept saying. Look, we're with the mortgage company. You don't have anyone on file that's authorized. So
To
what
talk
they
to
mean
us.
is to talk to us. So we can't tell you anything. And it doesn't matter that it's your mom. We just can't tell you anything.
No, I love this because I think this is really important. So case scenario, parents pass away, maybe the kids are minors, no one's on the house, no one's authorized to speak to the mortgage company
Yes.
on behalf of anybody.
Right.
Because the people who were that were authorized to speak to them are now deceased.
Correct.
And there was no paperwork.
So the biggest problem there is going to be, you already know minors don't have authority to do a lot of different things.
Right.
So now it's going to be a question of, well, has there been a probate proceeding put in place where there's some kind of representative that's representing the estate of the mother or the father? Those are specific documents that say this person is entitled to handle anything that's in the deceased person's name.
Right.
That would be the first thing. Then we're dealing with the kids. That may be a combination of having some guardianship in place for the children that handles their financial and their health care. There also may be some family law situations
Right.
under there, dealing with the guardian
Right.
of that, child. But there's just so many different nuances to it. So it's not as simple as saying, well, the kids are going to get it. Okay, but they're kids. And what we know about kids is we're not allowed until we get to a certain age that we can handle things like contracts and
Right,
different,
right,
arrangements. So it's multi-level now. And that's why whenever I deal with families, I'm looking at, are there any special needs children? Are there minors? Are there elderly parents involved? So I look at a whole package when I sit down with a family and I say, well, these are some things that you need to consider right now as living documents. These are things that you need to consider if you pass away today. These are things that you need to consider in terms of if you're caring for elderly parents, well, who's going to care for them if you pass away?
Right.
Right? What's going to happen to your elderly parent if they can't make decisions for themselves and pay their mortgage and pay their home and deal with all these other issues? So it's a multi-level planning, and it involves asking some tough questions and really thinking about things that are outside of what we would normally want to think about.
Like what kind of questions?
So I always like to look at this Nipsey Hussle situation because
Right.
they kept talking about, how's this girl think she's going to be the guardian of this child? And I'm like, well, what you have to understand of the daughter, Nipsey Hussle's daughter, there was this whole conversation about guardianship.
Right.
And some of the commentary that I started to read was, where's the mother, or how come they think that she can just take over the child and all this stuff? And I'm like, it's not about taking over. It's about this child potentially could be entitled to lots of money.
Right.
And she may need a representative to speak on her behalf. That's not always going to be the parent. And that's not always going to be a family member either. It might be a court-appointed person because whenever you hear the word guardianship, it's because there's a concern. There's a concern that someone's finances or their health care is at risk or their general well-being is at risk. And so you put a guardian in place to make sure that both of those things are taken care of. And sometimes that requires somebody appointed by the court. Especially if the family doesn't already have some kind of pre-need guardian in place. Sometimes that's going to require the courts to step in and say, well, this is the person that we authorize. The funds will be restricted typically. The medical care will be covered by this person. The court monitors it every year and sometimes periodically for different things. So thinking of the fact that we could have something happen to us anytime, step outside right now.
Right.
There's just so much that we can put in place to kind of look at the unexpected issues.
And I think we're not a community that likes to think of the unexpected.
Right.
And fortunately, the life that I've lived, really, I always think about the unexpected.
Right.
And I just think that our community or this generation, it's in our best interest to start thinking about the unexpected.
Right.
We do have parents that are aging. They do have properties, both here and in Haiti.
Yes.
They have businesses. They have mixed families.
Yep.
You have
They're taking care of family
grandparents,
members.
right? And they feel they want to age in a certain kind of way.
Right.
And so making sure, and we just spoke about health designee. The reason why I have a health designee is because I watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy, and I'm always like, if I get third-degree burns, if I'm in a coma, I got 7 days for y'all, and about 7 days, it's done.
Oh my
And
gosh.
there are people, like I know a sister, one of my sisters will never make that decision.
Wow.
I will be 20 years in.
Sitting there.
Yeah, and she'll come visit me, kiss me, make sure I'm
my
good.
gosh.
And I have, you need to know who your family is
Right.
if you don't want to live a certain kind of way.
Right. You don't want to live on a machine either. There's
Right,
a lot of people that think, okay, my family's going to take care of it. Something happens to me, everybody's going to take care of it. But that's not true. If something happens to
Especially
you
nowadays.
oh my God. If something happens to you right now and there's a lot of money, first of all, there's going to be a lot of conflict.
Right.
Because there's going to be that one or two people that says, well, you either owed them money, you're supposed to give them money, or you're going to be the best person to handle the money.
Right.
That may not have been the intention of that person when they passed away. And unfortunately, if they didn't leave anything,
It's up to the courts.
it's up to the courts. And the way the courts go, it's kind of like the lineage of the family. We look initially at, is there a husband or wife? If there's no husband or wife, now we look at kids. And we're looking at all kids. So it doesn't matter if this one child that you haven't spoken to in decades. They're still your child under the laws of the state of Florida. And I had a situation not too long ago where there was a large sum of money left. The person passed away. They were living with an extended family member. I mean, a few generations down.
Like a cousin.
Like a cousin. And when they passed away, there was no paperwork. So guess who we were looking for? Do they have a husband or wife?
They have children.
Do they have any children? Well, they did have children. And their children were just like,
Thank you.
thank you very much. They put their hands out. They took their little money. And the person who was caring for this person
Right.
for years,
Didn't get anything.
out in the wind, calling me to this day
Wow.
like, hello, what do I do? There's nothing I can do.
Right. So we talked about power of attorneys.
Yes.
We talked about some kind of documentation in terms of home ownership.
Right. So we're looking at deeds and things of that sort and making sure that we're not just, I'm going to add my daughter to my house. No.
No.
We don't do that. Like, you need to find out, like, if that's the right thing to do. Because what if your daughter goes into some kind of financial dismay? Her name's on the house.
Right.
It could be impacted if there's a lawsuit or if there's some other. So you don't want to lose it. But there's also documents that you can put in place that if you pass away today, your house can automatically roll over to the person that you want. So there's certain documents that you can put in place for that.
Right. And even that, one thing, rest assured, and we know this, we will all die.
Yep.
Right. And so just planning for that.
Yes.
What other aspects of it? We talked about healthcare designees, really, really important.
Right.
Making sure that you have someone who can make decisions on your behalf.
Absolutely. Pre-need guardians, a lot of times people don't think that they can designate someone as their guardian in advance, and you can, both as an adult and for your minor children. So if you have a thought that, hey, I want my sister or my brother or my mom to be my child's guardian if something happens, because remember, the guardian role can be split. You can have the financial person, and you can have the person that handles the health care and the general well-being.
Right.
They may not be the same person, right? Because there are some people in our family that we probably trust more with our dollars and cents. And there's some people that we're like,
no,
I mean, I know they'll take care of the child, but I don't want them touching my money.
Right.
So you can have that role split and designate, this is the person that I want to handle the monies if it comes to that point. This is the person that's going to handle any of the medical care and all of that. And you can designate that for yourself as well. So if something happens to you, you could already have someone in mind as a pre-need guardian. And that way, if God forbid a guardianship were have to be done for you, you'd already have someone in place. But you can avoid that with a power of attorney.
And that's different. And that's different from life insurance beneficiaries.
Yes.
And that's what I think that's a mixed up. Like, people are thinking of beneficiaries when actually they should be thinking about power of attorneys, all this stuff.
I would say so, because I've noticed when I ask people whether or not they have their children listed as beneficiaries, and I'm like, well, how old are your children? Mm-hmm. If your children are underage, that could be a question mark, because if you're leaving them a $500,000 policy or a $200,000 whatever, they're not going to be able to access that until they're of a certain age.
Right.
And that money is going to be restricted. So you may want to reconsider some of those things and think about maybe having a trust where the trust can now be the beneficiary of your life insurance. Mm-hmm. So those are ways around dealing with certain things. And then you also can control that money after death, right? So the trust, once you pass away, now becomes irrevocable. You have some things that you can control and say, well, you know what? I don't want my kids to get a lump sum. I want them to get, $5,000, when they turn 25. I want them to get $10,000 when they turn 30. You can break that down as you choose.
Right. This is all amazing.
It's good stuff.
And work that we need to do.
Absolutely.
So what does this look like? If someone wants to begin this conversation with their family and then an attorney, what's the process? So
I would say start doing your research. There's so much available online. You can look up the 101s of wills, trusts, and estate planning, so you can start to educate yourself. The Florida Bar has an excellent document that basically goes through some different consumer information. You can go to the Florida Bar website and look up those things. You can also find attorneys on the Florida Bar website. As far as my office, we do a lot of community education. So I go out to churches and different, facilities and talk to people about these issues. So you can attend one of our workshops and join us. But there's so much information at your fingertips right now that there's no reason that you can't have the conversation. The second thing is there are a lot of different tools that you can use. One would be just sitting down with your family and kind of thinking about what happens if, and go down the list, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many ifs that can happen. What happens if mom passes away today? What happens if dad passes away today?
What if they pass together?
What happens if one of the children passes? Is there something to cover their expenses and costs? What happens if the whole family goes and there's only one person left and it's the minor child, right? You want to think about all of these what ifs, and you have to understand who you're speaking with, because maybe your mom might not be the best, or your dad may not be the best to have that discussion. Maybe it would be the siblings having a discussion.
Right.
And then finding a different way to approach the parents and let them know, these are the things that we're thinking about. But do your research. There's so much out there that you can kind of look to and figure out and ask questions. There are lawyers out here that will sit down with you and do a consult. They may charge you a little something, but it's better to have an organized scheme of what it is that you want to do than to sit there idly thinking, well, everything will be fine. Everything will be taken care of. I have beneficiaries. Okay, but your beneficiaries are 12 and 5. Mm-hmm. If you pass away today, again, the Nipsey Hussle story, you pass away today while you got all this stuff going on, you're gone. There's nothing else that can be done at that point. Right. So you got to really be prepared for those things.
Mm-hmm. So if folks decide to draft up these documents, right?
Yes.
Where do these documents live?
So I know that there are some states where like the law office will keep it, or they have these online cloud deposits for wills. My suggestion is always keep it in a safe place at home. If you want to do a safe deposit box, keep in mind that if you don't have another person authorized to access the safe deposit box, you're going to have to get a court order to get that. So you want to keep it in a safe place. Maybe you could have a fireproof safe or whatever, a Ziploc bag, whatever makes you feel better, but have it in a safe place, but have it in a place where someone knows where it is.
So you need to tell someone this is where the documents are.
Yeah, and I would say tell the people that you feel are the authorized people that you want to know where your stuff is. Say, hey, my will and my important documents are in, the third drawer in the back room. Mm-hmm. In terms of your healthcare documents and your power of attorney, that's something that you want to keep easily accessible. So you might want to have it in that, that drawer in your office, or in your kitchen, or in your bedroom in a drawer, but let someone know where that stuff is, because if you go to the hospital today, someone shouldn't have to be searching all over your house to try to figure out, where your important documents are. So that's the key.
Can we talk about our community and important documents?
Don't start with me under the mattress, in the pocket of something.
Right. And so we have to know where the documents are.
Yeah. So that discussion needs to happen very early on to make sure that you are clear on what's going on. And we're not just talking about the will, the power of attorney, the healthcare. I'm also talking about the list of your passwords.
Yes.
I'm also talking about the mortgage paper, the deed, all of your financial accounts, like all of the information, because one thing that I've found myself doing on a number of occasions is I've had a case where I've had to go to the home and dig through this person's stuff.
Oh, wow.
Because the family's out of state and, this person was elderly. They were living by themselves. So now it's like, well, I don't know where anything is. Great. I need the keys because I'm now going to have to do a dig and bring the team so that we can figure out where everything is. And I'm searching blindly. I may find a thing or two, but I'm searching blindly. Imagine if you had things in one place. And what I've started to do with my clients at this point is when I do an estate planning package for them, I give them a binder. And I say, look, this is your binder. This is where your will and all your important documents go. Put it in a safe place. Also, add to this binder the following things. Passwords, important account information, an updated list of your children, an updated list of just important information. It could be things like dates of birth and social security number, but put it in a safe place.
For sure. But not only to discuss, I think we have done a lot of work to really ensure that we can begin to have these conversations with our parents.
Right.
But for folks who are starting families right now, it's even more important that you've laid this groundwork for you and your family and your children.
Right.
They may be newborns, whatever the case is, to begin to think about if anything happens, they're well taken care of.
Also, and I would like to look at the whole concept of a prenup or postnup.
Oh,
People always
yes,
think,
girl.
marriage is going to last forever and it's just going to be great and everything is great. And
Wait,
we're
Haitians
great.
get prenups?
And Haitians don't get prenups. Well, at least not any that I know.
Right,
but it is important because what you don't realize is when you marry someone, there are some automatic rights that you start to bank.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been married for a certain amount of years, or even if you just got married, there are certain entitlements that may start to kick in, especially if monies are being mixed. You have a property, even if you bought it on your own, is this person paying the mortgage?
Mm-hmm.
Are they investing in doing repairs? They're investing in your property. That's money. Right? They may have an interest in your things. So it's important to start thinking about, especially if you're a business owner, especially if you've come into a lot of money and you want to make sure that you're good. Mm-hmm. Yes, marriage is intended to last forever. However, marriage has not always lasted forever. There are people that do get divorced.
So what is the cleanest way to really kind of think about prenup, if there's a way to think about it?
I would say think of the prenup as part of your estate plan. It is something that says, I want to make sure that my family is good. And that means each person. And remember, a prenup is an agreement between the two.
Right.
So it's not necessary to say, well, you come in with what you got. And it may be an agreement of what you're going to get if there is a divide, right? So it's a way to plan before you get into the mix, or if you choose to do it after the fact. Let's say, you do get married and then it's like, oh man, I just got a lump sum of money. We need to sign an agreement before this money starts to mix together because I don't know the person's intention, whatever it is. But it's important for you to have discussions, start to think about the things that are critical, because it's not when problems come that you're going to have an easier discussion.
No, not at all.
The discussion is going to be way easier now than, we're not talking now. Okay, well, I'm taking all the money because we didn't have a discussion on what's going to happen with the joint bank account, right? So there's a lot of little things that need to be discussed, especially if you're going to have children. You already have a lot of decisions to make when you have children, but you should add to that list, the long-term legacy planning. I want to develop some wealth for my next generation, because why do you think other communities have certain things that we look in our community and we say, man, we need more of this? It's because there's a legacy building. When you were standing in line in college and there was that kid with that full check for their tuition, and you're sitting there in the financial aid line wondering, I don't even know if I'm going to have enough. There are some people that prepared for the process for their kids so that their kids wouldn't start off in debt. A lot of us started, our professional careers in deep, like I got a condo by the beach looking at the water kind of debt right now. I wish that I had the capability, but my parents didn't have that capability. And their parents didn't either. So it's generational. If we can start at this level and say, okay, we're going to make sure that our elderly parents are good and that our kids will be good, we can lay the foundation and we can move it from there.
I think that's important. And even you bring it up in terms of talking about a prenup, I often think how many of us believe that certain things are automatic. Because you're married, you automatically have a joint account. Those are things that are a little bit more nuanced than we think. And to have a discussion about what this looks like for us, for our unit, is extremely important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I wish we could look at the questions, but both of us are videotaping.
We had no questions we could look at. We
no. Is there something we missed?
So I think I should talk briefly about probate. Because when I look at the scheme of things, so here's where you should look at everything. Estate planning is a point in time where you can organize and plan and prepare for the unexpected. Probate and guardianship are typically things that happen because you didn't fully plan or because you didn't plan at all. So if I have a power of attorney and
wait. So having life insurance is not the plan.
So life insurance provides a payout when you pass away, right? That's all it does. It creates no organization of where that money is going to go. So if you have a, let's say, $50,000 life insurance policy. Okay. So the policy is going to be there and the money is going to go to your mom. If your mom is above 65 and receiving benefits, and she's about to receive $50,000,
it's going to jeopardize her benefits.
That may be a little bit of a problem. Now, there are ways around all kinds of things. But
that's good.
Do you see the first line of questioning is, if I leave this money here, here's what potentially could happen. So that's where the unexpected path happens.
Right.
Now, if I'm preparing for the unexpected, here's how the path could potentially happen. I left $50,000 and the money is going to go to my trust. And the beneficiary of my trust is my mom. And my mom is to receive these funds over time below the eligibility criteria for her benefits. So every month she'll receive a payment, or in the alternative, every month she'll receive certain services, certain supplemental things.
That's not actually
transportation,
cash.
Travel, a caregiver, all of the extra things that calculation won't include, right?
Good.
So it's thinking to that level where you can say, okay, if this happens, this is what could potentially happen, but this is how I can bypass that process. Right? So if I look at the scheme, I say estate planning is getting all of my ducks in a row, getting all of my processes together so that I can possibly avoid guardianship. Sometimes you can't avoid certain things. But guardianship is a process where I need someone to be appointed to handle my stuff because I'm not capable of doing so. But if I have a power of attorney designated, that person is going to step in when I'm not capable.
Right.
So I've bypassed that guardianship. Now, if I pass away without documents in place, that's a whole nother issue too. If I have a will, the court has instructions, and that will may say, I want my property to be sold and divided amongst these people, and I want these dollars to go here. I want these things to go to this person. I want these things to go to that person. So the court has instructions to follow. You'll still go through probate, but going through probate with a will is very different than going through probate with nothing.
But that's everything. When you talk about things, that's everything from property, cars, jewelry.
The notebook in your hand, the t-shirt, the hairbrush, the pen, the earrings.
Because y'all can't get these, I would say, on some shirts.
The bibelots that mom had at the house, all the little bibelots, the little trinkets that she had.
Everything.
That's everything.
Right.
The estate is everything. So if I think of the estate as this cup here, and I've put all of my things, financial accounts, investments, stocks, bonds, life insurance, like all of those things, right? Now, the beauty with things like life insurance and bank accounts is you can list a beneficiary automatically for those things. So you can avoid certain processes, but that doesn't avoid certain consequences. Because if I leave a beneficiary that could potentially be affected, like in my case, I have a 12-year-old nephew with autism. If I were to leave a large sum of money to him, those benefits are jeopardized.
Right.
So unless I'm leaving him enough money that he's going to survive for the rest of his life, if he has to qualify for benefits, I'm kind of messing that up by leaving him large sums of money.
That's an important point.
Right? So there are times where a large sum of money won't really hurt, right? If I'm 90 years old and I'm about to receive $50,000, man, forget Medicaid and all these other things, I'm good to go, right? I'll live on that 50. But if I'm 60... or if I'm 70, I don't know how long I'm going to live.
Right.
So how much can I spend in a year? Well, a nursing facility could cost me $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. That's just the facility.
That's a topic that we're going to have in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh. That's just the facility.
Right.
So imagine I need food, I need drink, I need clothing, I need doctor's visits, I need co-pays, I need all this other stuff.
All this stuff. Right.
So it's estate planning. The big picture of it is planning. It's making sure that everything that I have has an ultimate destination for it, and that destination is directed by me.
Yes.
So I'm making the decision of, if this happens, this is what I want.
I mean, but think about it. Let me pause you there. You worked all this time to get all these assets. Don't you think you want to be the person to make decisions on what will happen with those assets?
I have a guardianship client right now that is the guardian of an elderly person in her family. And the person who is being handled under this guardianship said to me one day, you can't tell me what's going to happen to my stuff. Now, technically I can, because your family member is the one that is your guardian, and they're the ones handling everything. But it made me pause, because it was like, this woman had worked all her years. She's in her 90s.
Right.
She has saved up her coin, and she has enough to survive for all time. And I'm coming in here to tell her what's going to happen to her house. That we're getting ready to clean up the house and the house is going to be sold. What? How I can't be telling you.
Because she didn't plan it.
Because she didn't plan it. Now, technically speaking, she's right. I can't be telling her stuff. But unfortunately, she's wrong, because all of the stuff is happening behind the scenes. She has no clue.
Right.
She has no clue.
Very unfortunate.
And thankfully, she has a family member that really cares.
Great.
And she has an attorney that's not just sitting there trying to gouge, because I could be sitting there like, all right, every month I'm looking for a check. But that's not how we operate. It's like, I have to think about, I have a family too. So if I'm doing something to these families, can you imagine? I have a family too.
Right.
So it's Estate planning is planning. It is at its core. It's like having a planner, having a calendar where you keep track of what's going on. It's the same thing with estate planning. It's keeping track of what's going to happen, those contingency things. What happens in the event of this and that and the third? And if you can answer those basic questions, then you at least have a core plan in place. And if you can put those in writing, you have an even better plan in place. And if you can certify that those writings are correct and you go to a right professional to get it done, then you have what's called peace of mind. And that's what estate planning is intended to do. It's intended to give you peace of mind that you may not have, and peace of mind that you want to give to your loved ones who are going to handle your stuff if something happens.
Did you want to say more about probates?
Probate. So probate is an interesting process because most people think, well, I just got to walk into the court with these papers because I'm the daughter. That's not how it works. Probate is a whole involved process. It could be simplified depending on the circumstances. It could be kind of mid-range depending on the circumstances, or it can be an all-out process that can take a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. I've seen probates go for multiple years. In fact, most of my probates right now have been going for at least 2 years.
Wow.
And when I say going, I mean sometimes a person has more than just a house or a bank account. And if they have multiple things, there's a lot of different things that we have to think about and deal with. And then if the families are fighting, which is my scenarios, where it's like brother against sister, 3 siblings here, 4 siblings here. Those are the scenarios that I'm coming across. Or extended family member versus the actual beneficiaries.
And if you know us, we will fight.
To the core. Even if you're not entitled, because you feel like there's something. I was taking care of them. That's great in theory. They didn't leave a will. I'm the one that spent everything. That's great in theory. You can file a claim against the estate and get your money, but there's nothing else. You don't have a contract you're providing me. You're writing down a list of how much you spent. Did the person sign a contract? Because if they did, now I can hold that contract with some water, right? But if there's no contract, there's not really much I can say about that.
Thank you.
That was thank you. Appreciate you. But I'm gone.
Yeah.
But what people don't understand about probate is it is a process. It is a court process. Even if you have a will, oftentimes you are still going through probate because the will just gives instructions. It doesn't transfer property. It doesn't transfer money. And it doesn't really do anything but give instructions. That's why it's called my last will and testament. It's my will. It's what I wanted. Now, there may be things covered in your will and there may be things not covered. That's why we go through a court process to make sure that everything is dealt with. But one thing I want people to understand about probate is it's way more expensive than planning. Because I've seen fees in probates in the 10,000s, in the couple thousands, but I've seen fees in estate planning way less. Right? Even if you spent a few thousand in estate planning, it could never touch probate because that number in probate could keep going on. I've seen attorneys' fees in probate for 20, 30,000. And these are probates that are contested and there's litigation going back and forth.
That's money off of what you could have.
All day long.
You could have started a business.
The pot
went down. Student loans, whatever the case is.
So if this cup was full, you're maybe going to get half if you're lucky. And that's if there's not more hands going into the pot at the end of the day. So it's better for you to understand how these pieces interchange. Because if you do your estate planning, you lessen your chance of having to deal with guardianship, which is all about me being unable to handle decisions for myself, so someone else needs to be appointed by the court. And then if you do your planning right, when you pass away, your loved ones don't have to deal with that probate process, at least in a certain way, right? They may just have to put the will through probate, but if you have a trust, guess what? You may be able to bypass that whole process, because now the trust is a document that exists beyond your death, and it controls certain things, and it has weight. But it's just so much that people need to understand that if you get these things in line, you can save yourself a whole lot. And again, that peace of mind, there's nothing like it.
Right. Thank you so much, Sandy.
No problem.
So I want to pause and say, again, thank you to Sandy and Spectrum Law Firm Miami for this amazing presentation. She's not giving you legal advice.
Not at all.
You would need to come to her office and have her become your lawyer for legal advice.
Absolutely. But
we wanted to do this series. We will be doing this every Sunday this month to really talk about things that we should be talking about with our community and loved ones as we begin to come of age and as our parents age.
Yes,
I think this is one of the most important topics. The next topic will be funeral planning. We're going to be talking about the costs and expectations of Haitian parents aging. Wow. They want to age in a certain kind of way. They want to age in place. And then we're going to also be talking about, I'm sorry, I
That's the
lost
other thing.
life insurance.
Life insurance.
Life
is a good one.
insurance.
Yes.
And so these are the topics. We're going to come back with another series of our own business. But this has been amazing, Sandy.
Thank you.
Where can they find you?
They can find us at Spectrum Law on Instagram, at the Spectrum Law Firm on Facebook, our website, thespectrumlawfirm.com. And I mean, basically, you can check out Amos Sam and you'll find our information. Shout out to my partner, Jermise G. I'm hoping that she's watching. I think she might be on the Instagram.
Thank you so much. And she's in Fort Lauderdale, but she travels.
Yes.
So,
I travel throughout the state of Florida, and my partner travels throughout the state of Texas. And we do a lot of the same things in both states.
So be sure to call them. We want to visit our people and show them love, but also as they come of age and they're experts in their field, to make sure that we're allowing them to shine bright, as bright as they can, and support their work. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right.